Preoperative preparations. Once the diagnosis is reached and surgery is contemplated, a preoperative evaluation is required taking into account both the underlying disease for which specific surgery is to be performed as well as any pre-existing, coexisting medical conditions which have a bearing on operative management. This is important to identify significant abnormalities which might influence the outcome of surgery. Preoperative preparation includes general assessment for fitness for the surgery and anesthesia correction of the underlying coexisting medical disease. Informed consent explaining the operative risk. General preparation for major surgery. Prophylactic measures against some postoperative complications. Preoperative preparation for an elective major surgery. In addition to diagnostic workup for the underlying disease, the general assessment for fitness for surgery and anesthesia is done by detailed history. The objective is to find out any coexisting medical disease and any risk factors, any history of respiratory disease, cough, hemoptysis, breathlessness, any history of chronic bronchial asthma, any history of cardiac disease, chest pain, breathlessness, any history of ischemic heart disease or hypertension, any history of diabetes, duration, controlled with diet, oral hypoglycemic agents or insulin, any history of bleeding diathesis and whether on any treatment, any other systemic disease pertaining to gastrointestinal system, urinary system or nervous system, any history of drug and alcohol intake, any previous history of general anesthesia and any adverse reactions like intractable vomiting, apnea or malignant hyperpyrexia due to succinylcholine. Detailed physical examination, general survey, mental state, nutrition, hydration status, any abnormalities of jaw and neck, any skin infection. Systemic examination, cardiovascular system, respiratory system, nervous system, gastrointestinal system, musculoskeletal system. Investigations, baseline investigations, complete hemogram, HB%, RBC count, PCV, TLC, DLC, platelet count blood biochemistry, blood sugar, urea and creatinine urine for routine and microscopic examination chest sciagram, PA view ECG, particularly in patients over 40 years and in patients with cardiac disease and hypertension. Special investigations, based on the suspected coexisting disease, in patients with respiratory disease, COPD, pulmonary function test, FeNO and FVC are good indicators of obstructive and restrictive lung disease. Sputum culture and sensitivity, arterial blood gas analysis, in patients with cardiovascular disease, echocardiography, treadmill test, coronary arteriography in patients with significant ischemic heart disease, in patients with bleeding diathesis, bleeding time, clotting time, prothrombin time, PT, partial thromboplastin time, KLN activated, PTTK, and platelet count. In patients with jaundice, liver function test. Tests for viral markers, HBsAg, HbEg, HBcAg, HBV antibody and HBc antibody. Correction of the underlying coexisting medical disease, treatment of the underlying respiratory disease. Antibiotics for respiratory infection, bronchodilator for obstructive airway disease, chest physiotherapy. Treatment of hypertension and ischemic heart disease. Treatment of hypertension with antihypertensive drugs. Significant coronary artery disease requires angioplasty or coronary artery bypass graft before major elective surgery. Control of diabetes mellitus, correction of malnutrition, by enteral or parenteral nutrition, correction of anemia by blood transfusion, prophylaxis against tetanus infection. Informed consent. Patient and the responsible relatives should be explained about the planned surgical treatment, its risks and possible consequences in understandable terms, and this should be recorded in a chart. The patient or the responsible relative should sign this informed consent in advance. General preparation. On the day before surgery, final preoperative orders are written. Skin preparation. Shaving is commonly used for removal of hair. However, shaving may cause tiny wounds in the skin and may be associated with increased incidence of skin infection. Alternatively, depilatory creams may be used for hair removal. Depilatory creams may sometimes cause allergic reaction. The hairs may also be removed by clipping. Clipping is now regarded as a better way of hair removal. A preoperative shower with an antiseptic solution on the day before surgery and on the morning of the day of surgery has been claimed to reduce the incidence of skin infection. Diet. Omit solid food 12 hours before surgery and liquids 6 to 8 hours before surgery. Purgatives and enemas. Patient with well-regulated bowel habits does not require preoperative purgative or enemas except in colorectal surgery or in abdominal operations likely to be associated with delayed bowel recovery. Premedications. Benzodiazepines are commonly used as premedications. They act both as anxiolytic and hypnotic. Diazepam, lorazepam, oxazepam or nitrazepam may be used as a premedication. They are effective within 1 hour of oral administration and action lasts for 2 to 4 hours. Nasogastric tube. Routine use of nasogastric tube is not required, particularly for operations like cholecystectomy. If the patient has gastric outlet obstruction or intestinal obstruction, a nasogastric tube is to be inserted preoperatively for decompression of the stomach. Catheterization. Preoperative catheterization is required for pelvic operations and in situations where monitoring of urine output is required during operation and in the postoperative period. Blood transfusion. In operations where there is anticipation of blood loss, adequate units of blood should be kept reserved with proper grouping and cross-matching so as to make the blood available during surgery. Preoperative volume correction. If the patient is thought to have volume deficit before operation, adequate replacement should be done to correct the fluid and electrolyte deficit before operation. Continuing medications. Patient receiving corticosteroid, antihypertensive, digoxin and L-thyroxine should continue all these drugs in the perioperative period. Oral anticoagulants. Aspirin should be withdrawn 5 to 7 days before surgery to prevent excessive bleeding during surgery. Prophylaxis against surgical infections. Meticulous surgical technique and strict aseptic precautions are required to prevent surgical infections. Prophylactic antibiotics are not required in clean operations. Prophylactic antibiotics are however required in clean contaminated and contaminated operations. In grossly contaminated operations, the antibiotics should be continued in the postoperative period for 5 to 7 days. Prophylactic antibiotics should be administered at induction of anesthesia. Antibiotics administered 1 to 2 hours of contamination is not effective. Depending on length of operation, antibiotics dose may need to be repeated. Therapeutic concentration of the antibiotic should be achieved in the blood before skin incision. The antibiotics administered should be bactericidal in nature and the choice of antibiotics should depend on the common pathogen most likely to be encountered in a given situation. Prophylaxis against tetanus infection. Past history of immunization is important to plan immunization for tetanus prophylaxis. Immunization history: unknown or not immunized. Active immunization by 3 doses of adsorbed tetanus toxoid intramuscularly at 1 month interval. Afterwards, a booster dose may be given 5 years after the primary course and again after 10 years. For tetanus-prone wounds, patients should also be given a dose of human tetanus immunoglobulin 250 U intramuscularly for passive immunization. Fully immunized in childhood. For minor or non-tetanus prone wound, no vaccine is required if patient has received the last dose within 10 years. If last dose was taken earlier than 10 years, 1 dose of tetanus toxoid is to be given. For tetanus-prone wound, no vaccine is required if the last dose was taken within 5 years. If last dose was taken earlier than 5 years, 1 dose of tetanus toxoid is to be given. Tetanus immunoglobulin is not required if the patient is fully immunized earlier. Prophylaxis against deep vein thrombosis. A number of factors influence development of deep venous thrombosis in postoperative period. These include age of the patient, nature and duration of surgery, presence of jaundice, malignant disease, cardiac disease, past history of deep venous thrombosis. Depending on these risk factors, the patient has been stratified into high-risk, intermediate and low-risk group. In low-risk group, anticoagulants are not required for deep vein thrombosis prophylaxis. Graduated elastic stockinette and early ambulation following surgery are required to prevent development of deep venous thrombosis. In intermediate and high-risk group, prophylaxis against deep venous thrombosis may be achieved with the use of infractionated heparin low molecular weight heparin graduated elastic stockinette. What is ASA, American Society of Anesthesiologists, grading for assessment of risk for major surgery and anesthesia? Class 1, normal healthy individual. No coexisting morbid condition. Class 2, mild to moderate systemic disease, e.g. controlled diabetes and hypertension. Class 3, severe systemic disease which is not incapacitating, e.g. uncontrolled diabetes, hypertension and heart disease with limited exercise tolerance. Class 4, incapacitating systemic disease which is life-threatening, e.g. severe and persistent angina. Class 5, a moribund patient who is not expected to live and surgery performed as a last resort. A. Surgery performed as emergency. Preoperative preparation in a case of toxic goiter. History, physical examination and routine investigations. Special investigations depending on the presence of any comorbid condition. Specific preparation for patients with thyrotoxicosis. Special investigations, thyroid profile, T3, T4 and TSH. Ultrasonography of thyroid gland radionuclide thyroid scan in selected cases The aim is to ensure that the patient is as near euthyroid as possible before surgery. Treatment is started with antithyroid drugs, neomacazole, 5 mg tablets, 10 mg, 8 hourly or 6 hourly, 30 to 40 mg per day for 8 to 12 weeks. When patient reaches the euthyroid status, reduce the dose to 5 mg TDS. If the patient shows signs of hypothyroidism or the gland shows signs of increased L-thyroxine, may be started in low dose, 50-100 mg. Beta blocker, propranolol 40 mg TDS or nadolol 80 mg OD gives rapid symptomatic relief and should be continued for 7 days postoperatively. Anxiolytic drug may be given. Assessment of response, sleeping pulse rate, repeat thyroid profile. Lugol's iodine, 10 drops TDS for 10 to 14 days before surgery, reduces vascularity of the thyroid gland, blocks release of thyroid hormones during surgery. An alternative to Lugol's iodine is potassium iodide tablets, 60 mg TDS. If the patient has reaction to the antithyroid drugs, how will you prepare him for surgery? If the patient develops reaction to antithyroid drugs, the alternative way of preparation would be by use of beta blocker, propranolol. Start with 40 mg thrice daily. Dose may be increased to 80 mg thrice daily. Alternatively, nadolol may be used 80-160 mg once daily. Use of Lugol's iodine or potassium iodide tablets 10 to 14 days before surgery. This regime provides a rapid way for preparation of thyrotoxic patient for surgery. Preoperative bowel preparation for colorectal surgery. Good preoperative bowel preparation is required before colorectal surgery to reduce the incidence of wound infection and anastomotic leakage. In addition to general preparation, the specific preparation for colorectal surgery includes mechanical preparation of bowel, diet, low residue diet 48 to 72 hours before surgery on day before surgery only clear liquid is allowed no feed on the day of surgery. Bowel wash. Balanced electrolyte solution with polyethylene glycol, available as a powder, PEGLEC, is to be dissolved in 2 liters of water and taken on the day before surgery. This is an effective way of bowel preparation. This brings about osmotic catharsis and may render the whole gut empty. Antibiotic preparation. Mechanical wash of the colon does not sterilize the gut. Bacterial count in the colon may be reduced by administration of luminal antibiotics like neomycin 1 gram plus erythromycin base 1 gram, on the day before operation at 1 pm, 3 pm and 11 pm when surgery is planned at 9 am next day. A systemic antibiotic is also administered, e.g. ceftriaxone plus metronidazole, before induction of anesthesia and after 6 hours and 16 hours in postoperative period. If there is contamination during surgery, the antibiotics may be continued for 2 to 3 days. What are the other methods of mechanical bowel preparation? Total or whole gut irrigation. A Riley's tube is passed beyond the duodenojejunal flexure. With the patient sitting on a commode, couch, normal saline is passed through the Riley's tube at 2 to 3 liters per hour. This clears the whole gut. When clear saline passes per rectum, the bowel is clean. Once clear fluid passes per rectum, the wash should be continued for a further period of 1 hour. About 8 to 9 liters of saline are required. This procedure is contraindicated in persons with cardiovascular disorders, as sodium overload may precipitate heart failure. Osmotic catharsis. Administration of oral mannitol induces osmotic catharsis and empties the colon of its contents. Elemental diet for 3 to 5 days before surgery. Elemental diet is a predigested food which gets absorbed by the terminal ileum and leaves no residue, thereby rendering an empty colon. On-table lavage. In cases with stenotic lesion presenting with subacute obstruction. Done at the time of emergency surgery. The procedure involves isolate colon, appendectomy is done, a purse string suture is applied at the base of appendix and a tube is passed into the colon. Another purse string is applied in the colon proximal to the site of obstruction and a tube is passed into the colon by making a nick and the purse string suture is tied around the tube. Normal saline is run into the colon through the proximal tube and the fluid drained out through the distal tube. The whole colon may be washed off well by on-table colonic lavage. Preoperative preparation in a case of gastric outlet obstruction. What are the electrolyte changes in patients with gastric outlet obstruction? These patients are chronically dehydrated due to vomiting and has electrolyte abnormalities. Initially due to vomiting, the major loss is fluid rich in hydrogen and chloride ion resulting in hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. At this stage serum sodium and potassium is usually normal. To compensate for this metabolic alkalosis, the kidney excretes low chloride and more bicarbonate. While losing bicarbonate, the kidney also loses sodium. The reaction of urine is alkaline. When the gastric losses continue, the patient becomes progressively more dehydrated and hyponatremic. In an attempt to conserve the circulating volume and to conserve sodium, the kidney absorbs sodium preferentially and excretes hydrogen ion and potassium ions. The reaction of urine becomes acidic due to loss of hydrogen ion in urine. At this stage, in spite of metabolic alkalosis, the kidney excretes an acidic urine. This is called paradoxical aciduria. Hence, the alkalosis becomes more severe and the hyponatremia and hypokalemia becomes more marked. Secondary to the metabolic alkalosis, plasma ionized calcium may fall and may result in tetany and disturbances of conscious level. In addition to general preparation, patient with gastric outlet obstruction needs some specific preparation. The preparation includes 1. Correction of dehydration, either by oral fluid or by intravenous normal saline infusion. Adequate urine output suggests proper hydration. 2. Correction of electrolyte imbalance, by intravenous infusion of normal saline. Once adequate urine output is established, potassium should be supplemented to correct hypokalemia. 3. Correction of anemia, by blood transfusion. 4. Correction of hypoproteinemia, either by oral high-protein diet or by amino acid, fresh frozen plasma or human albumin transfusion. 5. Gastric lavage. Gastric lavage is done before each feed 4 to 5 days prior to surgery. Gastric lavage removes the food residue, decreases the mucosal edema and also brings back the gastric tonicity. 6. Correction of hypocalcemia. Intravenous calcium gluconate will correct associated hypocalcemia. Preoperative preparation in a case with obstructive jaundice. Detailed history and physical examination to establish the cause of jaundice. In addition, inquire about systemic symptoms and a detailed systemic examination to ascertain any coexisting medical disease. The cause of obstructive jaundice may be ascertained by taking history, dark eyes in urine, pruritus in pale stool, general examination, biochemical investigations and radiological investigations. Investigations. A. Routine. See above. Preparation for major elective surgery. B. Special. Complete liver function test. Serum bilirubin, total, conjugated and unconjugated bilirubin, serum protein, total protein, albumin and albumin-globulin ratio, serum enzymes, SGOT, SGPT, alkaline phosphatase. The latter is especially elevated in biliary obstruction. Prothrombin time expressed as INR, International Normalized Ratio. Imaging, ultrasonography, MRCP, magnetic resonance cholangiopancreatography, ERCP, endoscopic retrograde cholangiopancreatography, CT scan of abdomen. Metabolic problems in a patient with obstructive jaundice, malnutrition with hypoproteinemia. Increased incidence of infection. Bleeding tendency due to deficit of vitamin K. Renal problems, increased chance of renal failure in postoperative period, hepatorenal syndrome. The causes of renal failure is multifactorial. Most common cause of renal failure in patients with obstructive jaundice is gram-negative endotoxemia. Decreased intravascular volume. Kidneys are more sensitive to ischemia, bile salt deposition in the renal tubules, anemia, diminished carbohydrate reserve. Dehydration. Preoperative preparation involves correction of the above metabolic abnormalities to reduce the development of postoperative complications. Correction of malnutrition and hypoproteinemia. Increased dietary protein, transfusion of fresh frozen plasma, transfusion of amino acid or human albumin. Prevention and control of infection. For prophylaxis, broad-spectrum antibiotics are started 24 hours before surgery. Combination of blood-spectrum antibiotics like ampicillin plus gentamicin plus metronidazole or cefuroxime plus metronidazole or ceftriaxone plus metronidazole. Control of bleeding tendency. A prothrombin time index of greater than 80% is required before surgery. Vitamin K deficiency is corrected by administration of vitamin K 10 mg intramuscularly once daily until prothrombin time comes within normal range. A 5 to 7 days course is usually adequate. Maintenance of renal function. The patient is to be kept well hydrated. Plenty of fluids by mouth. On day of operation, IV fluid is to be started from morning. In case of inadequate urine output, 1 ml per kilogram, H, furosemide or mannitol may be administered. Earlier injection mannitol was used routinely in preoperative, intraoperative and postoperative period to prevent renal failure. However, it is not routinely used nowadays. Avoid nephrotoxic drugs. Correction of anemia by blood transfusion. Building up of hepatic glycogen stores by plenty of oral glucose and carbohydrate, and IV dextrose infusion. Preoperative preparation of a patient with diabetes mellitus. What are the problems in patients with diabetes mellitus? Long-standing diabetes mellitus leads to complications which may involve all the systems. A. Vascular changes. 1. Microvascular changes. Nephropathy neuropathy. Motor, sensory, autonomic ocular. 2. Macrovascular changes. Coronary vascular disease peripheral vascular disease cerebrovascular disease. B. Non-vascular changes. Gastroparesis, sexual dysfunction. C. Increased incidence of infection. What are the problems in patients with diabetes coming for surgery? Increased incidence of infective complications. Perioperative hypo or hyperglycemia. Diabetic ketoacidosis or hyperosmolar states. Impairment of wound healing due to decreased phagocytic activity. Impaired proliferation of fibroblasts and associated microangiopathy. Increased incidence of cardiac complications like acute myocardial infarction or fatal arrhythmias. Associated autonomic neuropathy may cause vomiting, abdominal distension, bladder disturbances. What are the preoperative investigations for a diabetic patient due for elective major surgery? Preoperative evaluation of diabetic patient should include a good history and clinical evaluation to assess any underlying comorbid conditions. Complete hemogram blood urea, creatinine and serum electrolytes, urinary albumin and creatinine ratio, electrocardiography and echocardiography. Assessment for retinopathy, fundus examination. Management of diabetic patient in the perioperative period depends on nature of surgical trauma, duration of perioperative fasting, blood sugar controlled by what measure, diet, oral hypoglycemic or insulin. Management of patients controlled on insulin. The optimum blood sugar level in the perioperative period is 100-200 mg%. If blood sugar is less than 100 mg%, chance of hypoglycemia is more, whereas if blood sugar is greater than 200 mg%, the incidence of infective complications are increased. Patient should be admitted 2 to 3 days before surgery. Long-acting insulin should be stopped and soluble insulin started. Patient should be the first case in the operating list in morning. The aim is to prevent perioperative hyperglycemia and hypoglycemia. Maintenance of strict normoglycemia is not advocated. 1 unit of soluble insulin neutralizes 2 grams of dextrose. A. For minor surgery, omit morning dose of insulin, start previous diet and insulin regimen after surgery. B. For major surgery, 1. Intraoperative management, on the day of surgery omit the morning dose of insulin check fasting blood sugar start GKI infusion, 10% dextrose charged with 15 units of insulin and 10 millimoles of KCl to run 100 ml per hour. If fasting blood sugar is less than 100 mg%, charge 10 units of insulin, and if fasting blood sugar is more than 200 mg%, charge 20 units of insulin in the 10% dextrose bottle. If the duration of surgery is more than 1 hour, blood sugar should be checked hourly. During the operation, if within acceptable range, no extra insulin required. If blood sugar is high, give additional insulin subcutaneously. 2. Postoperative management. Postoperatively, patients are usually managed by GKI regimen, glucose potassium and insulin infusion, also known as Alberti regimen. 10% dextrose solution charged with 15 units of soluble insulin and 10 millimoles of potassium is infused at the rate of 100 ml per hour. Blood sugar is checked hourly. Blood sugar should be maintained in the range of 100-200 mg%. If blood sugar is outside the target range, the infusion bottle is to be changed. If blood sugar less than 100 mg%, add 10 units insulin to 10% dextrose. If blood sugar greater than 200 mg%, add 20 units insulin to 10% dextrose. If blood sugar is greater than 400 mg% in the postoperative period, glucose infusion is to be stopped. Start on normal saline drip and hourly intravenous insulin till blood sugar comes down to 200-250 mg%. Then start GKI infusion. As soon as the patient is able to tolerate oral feeding, intravenous fluid is withdrawn and oral feeding and subcutaneous insulin is restarted. The intravenous insulin should be withdrawn after about 1 hour of subcutaneous insulin injection. The insulin requirement increases over the baseline requirements on the day of surgery and first 2 postoperative days and usually comes down to normal by the 3rd postoperative day following an uncomplicated surgery. The mean insulin requirement increases 66% on the day of surgery and 23% and 15% on first and second postoperative days. What is the alternative insulin regime for perioperative management? Alternatively, insulin injection may be administered by an infusion pump using a sliding scale. 10% dextrose with 10 millimoles of potassium chloride is run at the rate of 100 milliliters per hour. 0.5 milliliters, 50 units, of injection insulin is taken in a syringe containing 49.5 milliliters of normal saline and placed in a syringe driver. Blood sugar is checked hourly. The rate of insulin infusion is adjusted depending on the blood sugar level as follows. Blood glucose mg percent insulin infusion units per hour. Less than 100 none. 100 to 140. 1. 140 to 200. 2. 200 to 400. 3. Management of patients controlled on oral hypoglycemic agents, OHA-A. For minor surgery, omit morning dose of OHA, operate early in the morning. The diabetic patient should be the first case on the day's list. Postoperatively, start on previous diet plus OHA. B. For major surgery, if well controlled, omit morning dose of OHA. Sulfonylurea drugs should be stopped on the day before the operation. Check blood sugar on morning of operation if well controlled. Start glucose potassium insulin, 10% dextrose solution charged with 15 units of insulin and 10 millimoles of potassium chloride, GKI, drip to run intraoperatively 100 milliliters per hour. If duration of operation is more than 1 hour, intraoperative blood sugar is to be checked and additional insulin administered if blood sugar is above the acceptable range. Postoperatively, manage with GKI infusion or glucose potassium infusion and insulin by a sliding scale, see above. Omit IV fluids as soon as possible and start oral diet and previous dose of oral hypoglycemic agent. If not well controlled on oral hypoglycemics, stop oral hypoglycemic agents and start short-acting human insulin, administered twice or thrice daily. Subsequent management is same as patients controlled on insulin, see above. Management of patients controlled by diet restrictions. A. For minor surgery, no special preparation is required. Patient resumes usual diabetic diet immediately after operation. B. For major surgery, monitor blood glucose immediately before operation, during operation, if duration of operation is greater than 1 hour, and hourly after operation. Restrict glucose infusion in the perioperative period. Each 5% dextrose bottle should be neutralized with 8 units of insulin. If control is good, i.e. blood glucose is in the range of 100-200 mg%, no additional insulin is required. If at any time the blood sugar is above 200 mg%, then intravenous insulin should be administered either by GKI regime or by the sliding scale.